like to introduce our next speaker, our faculty member at the Ottawa campus, Sylvie Gouin. Sylvie is an Ayurvedic lifestyle consultant. She is a yoga teacher, yoga therapist, and an author. She has a degree in holistic theology, and she offers her services through Inspired Living with Sylvie. She is a member of the Academy of Naturopaths and Natural Therapists of Canada and the director of teacher training for the Beyond School of Yoga in Canada. Sylvie has over 20 years of experience teaching classes and workshops on the subjects of meditation, Ayurvedic, holistic stress management, yoga, and she does and presents these lectures to people of all walks of life in a variety of settings. She has an additional 12 years of experience in organizing and leading teaching recognized yoga teacher training certification programs. And having developed a teaching style that is engaging and interactive, Sylvie thrives on inspiring others to inspire themselves to directly experience the many benefits of these empowering and wise practices that have been around for thousands of years. Sylvie teaches Ayurveda, the mind-body healing course at the Institute of Holistic Nutrition's Ottawa campus. Let us welcome Sylvie.
Hi. Thank you. So I'd like to say hi. I can't see you, but I'm very happy to be here with you today. I think that it's wonderful when we're at a place in our life where we can set the time aside to really start to give our attention to the power of nutrition. And so if you're here, so many things have come to fruition in your life that makes you inspired to be curious about this approach to well-being. I'm very happy, grateful to be part of the Institute of Holistic Nutrition. My experience at the school in Ottawa is nothing but positive in working with the faculty, working with the students. It's a beautiful place with a fabulous program. So if you're thinking about it, you know, I wish you all the best in your journey as you start moving forward. So as Elizabeth mentioned, I'll be talking about Ayurveda today. So Ayurveda is a practice, a study on its own, right? There are Ayurvedic doctors. In the context of this program here, Ayurveda is a small portion of your program. It plants the seed to start to understand the principles of Ayurveda, and it helps you to help your future clients enhance your own nutritional approach. And it's important to also understand that Ayurveda is a very ancient practice. It comes from India. It's a sister practice to yoga. And the process of Ayurveda is very much about the healing, the nourishing of the physical body, the mental body, and the spiritual body. It's a practice that encompasses our entire being. And it's also a practice that is rooted in the awareness of being deeply connected with the world of nature. So I've put together a little PowerPoint presentation to provide a visual as I talk. So I will be presenting until 12:30, and then feel free to put some questions in the chat, but please wait for the final question where we'll have a dialogue when the presentation is done, and I'll be happy to converse with you then. So if you'll just bear with me right now as I share my screen. There we go. So we're talking about Ayurveda and stress today, but you see the title of my slide is Ayurveda and Energy, and I'll explain this in just a moment. So again, my name is Sylvie Gouin, and I'm very happy to be with you today. So Ayurveda, the word Ayurveda can be translated as the science of life. And as I mentioned, Ayurveda is very much about connecting with the world of nature in order to better understand our nature. This is also how the process of yoga evolves. So to better understand ourselves, we look at the world of nature. And to better understand the world of nature, we look at ourselves and we see the interconnectedness between our nature and the world of nature, as opposed to seeing it as two different entities. Like it's the realization that we are interconnected. There is an ancient saying, I think if I remember correctly, Yatta Brahmande Tada Pindande, as within, so without, as without, so within. As is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm. As is the macrocosm, so is the microcosm. And the more that we can open our minds up to this understanding, or even to this reflection, to this paying attention of the world of nature, outside, inside, inside, outside. For example, I'll wait for this example in just a moment. So you'll see at the bottom here, as within, so without, as without, so within. And then right below it says, don't manage stress, manage energy. Why would we want to manage something we don't want when we can start to manage what we want? So that consciousness that if I start to pay attention to what makes me feel alive, what are the things that make me feel energized and uplifted, and how can I start to include more of those things in my life? Become an expert of what I want rather than being an expert of what I don't want. And often when it comes to stress, it's, although pretty much inevitable, it's something we don't really want that much of, right? So as I mentioned, Ayurveda, very rooted in this body, mind, and soul, which bears the question of who am I? So this understanding, this willingness to explore who we are at the core. What is it that makes me feel alive, as I just mentioned? What is it that impacts my life? So if we think of stress in the context for this class here as the state of being out of harmony with our nature, and then energy as the state of being in harmony with our nature. So when I'm stressed, I'm out of harmony with my nature. When I'm energized, I'm in harmony with my nature. So the example that I wanted to bring up here is, imagine that you're on a beautiful path. So let's say Gatineau Park. I assume everyone here is pretty much from Ottawa, and it's a beautiful day. The sun is shining, there's a breeze, the moisture in the air feels good on your skin. There's not too many people on the path so that you don't feel crowded, but there's enough in terms of what you like to create that supportive energy. So when we think of that image of being on this beautiful path with the sun and the breeze and the moisture in the air, we all have an image that there might be some similarities, but there would also be some differences. So for some like it a little cooler, some like it a little hotter, some like a big wind or a smaller breeze. We all have these different ways that we feel within the world of nature, and the way that we feel in the world of nature is based on our nature, on our personal preferences. So the process of moving away from a state of stress, of being out of harmony with our nature, and moving into a state of energy, of being in harmony with our nature, begins by asking the question, who am I? And paying attention to, as I mentioned, what makes us feel alive. And also to pay attention to what is in our power to make us feel alive. And one of the places where we certainly have power is when it comes to the choices of the food that we'll eat. Especially here, I mean, we have access to anything that we want all year long. We live pretty much in the North Pole, and we get to complain about the price of broccoli in the winter instead of thinking, my goodness, I've got broccoli in winter. I've got anything I want all year long. So this consciousness of what is in my power based on what makes me feel alive is the process of moving from a state of stress to a state of energy in terms of what is in our power, because there will always be things that are out of our power, things that are unexpected, and we are all living this right now. So, but what we can do is we can take care of what's in our power. For example, one of the examples that I give is if you're a cyclist or a skater, you do any type of sports outdoors, there will always be days where it's super windy and days where it's not so windy. You can't really change that. There will always be times where you're going against the wind. But what you can change is how you take care of your vehicle. So if I'm on my bike going against the wind and I've got air in my tire and my chain is oiled up and I'm not wearing an oversized windbreaker, then I'm setting myself up for success. If I'm going against that wind with no air in my tire, no oil on my chain, and a big windbreaker, then I'm setting myself up to have even more resistance. So the process of Ayurveda, the process of moving from this state of stress to energy, is by setting ourselves up for success, if you will, setting ourselves up to have an abundance and a surplus of energy by paying attention to what is in our power and by paying attention to what our starting point is, what our individual starting point is. And Ayurveda provides us with a variety of tools to better understand our starting points, and then based on our starting points, create lifestyle habits that include what we choose to eat in order to enhance our energy. So because it's part of the world of nature, one of the things that we look at are the 5 elements that are found in the world of nature. So the 5 elements are air, space, fire, water, and earth. Earth, water, fire, air, and space. And the more we can give attention to the 5 elements, the more we see them everywhere. They are everywhere. And the more we see them, the more it makes sense. Part of the Ayurvedic process begins by the recognition that in order to apply these principles, I have to be in a state where I'm willing to learn, right? There are all things in our life where we're not really willing to learn. Like, for example, if I go get my car fixed and my mechanic wants to start teaching me how to fix my car, in all honesty, I'm not that interested. So because I'm not that interested, I'm not open to hearing. So the process of learning begins by being in a place where we are open to learning to something. The fact that you're here says that you're at a place in your life where you're open to learning about nutrition. You want to know how you can best enhance your life as a whole by paying attention to what you feed this beautiful vehicle, the magnificence of our physical body, our mind. And we do this partly by paying attention to the 5 elements. So if my mind is open to learning about the 5 elements, then the next stage is to start to think about it on a regular basis. Because the more I think about it, the more I see it around me, the more I can embody it and the more I can integrate it. there's beliefs in the world of yoga and the world of Ayurveda that our attention is one of our greatest superpowers. The moment we give our attention to something, we give it life, right? And that what we focus on grows. So what shall I give the gift of my attention to? And part of this process of using Ayurveda in order to feed our energy rather than feed our stress has to do by paying attention to the world of nature, as within, so without, as without, so within. So these 5 elements carry a variety of different energy, a variety of different principles. So, for example, if we think about space, well, space is space that holds all things. If you think of where you're sitting right now, where you are in your home or wherever it is that you are, and you think of all of the things that surround you, and the space that's in between you and the things that surround you, and the space that you currently occupy, and how that continuously changes. And then we think of our internal space, the space in the mouth. We think about creating space for the diaphragm to move. So the space that holds it all, and then the internal space. So for example, if we think about nutrition from an Ayurvedic perspective, part of it is about leaving enough space at the end of a meal for the digestive process to occur. If I eat until I'm stuffed, until there's no more room, then the food, which was meant to be a source of energy, has now become a source of depletion because there's no space for the digestive process. I think most of us have experienced this in our life where we've eaten just a bit too much, and rather than feeling energized at the end of the meal, we felt depleted, we felt heavy because we didn't leave enough space for the digestion to occur. So that's one of the aspects of space. Of course, there's so much more that can be said about it. The air is, it relates also to prana, a form of energy. I think most people are used to that word, have heard it enough, the prana, the life force. And the air is, of course, also the breath, right? The symbolism, even if we think about it in the context of eating, of not just bite and swallow, but bite, chew, breathe, take the time in between bites. And also in the sense of the life force that's found in the food, but I'll talk about that a little bit more. And the air is also a representation of the movement of the body, the required movement. And then if we look at fire, fire is the representation of the digestive process. So if you think of a fire, and then you put something in the fire eats that something up and transforms it into energy. So we have a digestive system. I take an avocado and I eat the avocado, and my digestive system will transform that avocado so that the vitamins and the minerals and the fat can move to where my body needs it most in order to be able to give me a source of energy. So for the digestive process, for the nutrition to be of value, I have to have a strong digestive system. I have to be able to digest my experiences. I have to be able to digest my food. And then we also look at the element of water. So the element of water, the fluid expressions of the body, all the fluids that move through our body, and also the sensation of the natural wetness of the mouth, the consciousness of tasting our food. Again, when we think about eating and just not biting and swallowing, but really taking in the food and having a consciousness of the energy of that food, of where that food came in, taking the time to chew and taste all of its wonderful flavors. And if we're eating real food, the more we chew, the more the flavors come out. If we're eating processed food, the more we chew, the blander it tastes. Processed food is meant to be bite and swallow, burst and then gone. And if you haven't tried that, I really invite you to try that. Like if you eat a carrot, and the more you chew that carrot, it's just amazing, all the flavors that come out. And of course, the water element, the reminder of the hydration, and that whole foods already has a lot of water. We're often taught you should drink this amount of water, that amount of water throughout the day. But if we're eating food that has a lot of water in it, then that potentially changes the amount of water that we need. It depends, because processed food will have, again, less of that water element. And then the earth element, well, it refers to the solid expressions of the body, the solid structures of the body. It's also associated with the sense of smell. Like each one of these elements is associated with a different sense. So the air, for example, is the sense of touch. The space is the sense of hearing. Fire is the sense of sight. Water is the sense of taste. And earth is the sense of smell. So if we think about it in terms of our nutrition, the smelling of our foods, the beautiful aromas that come out as we cook and as we let things simmer. So as within, so without, as without, so within. The world of nature and its 5 elements. The example that I gave earlier about walking on a beautiful path in a park that you're familiar with, and having the harmonization of these 5 elements manifesting on your walk. And if we see them externally, as I mentioned, we really start to see them internally. And we start to notice that when we go about our days, whatever it is that we are seeking, we are somehow seeking one of these 5 elements. We want to feel grounded. We want to feel water is that fluid, again, the juiciness of life, the beauty of life. The fire is the passion, the awakening, the ability to follow through on what makes us feel alive. The air, that consciousness of giving and receiving in balance. We can't just give away our energy, and we can't always be in a state of receiving. It's the exchange that makes us feel so uplifted. And then the space, the openness to possibilities, the not knowing, and the importance of having space. So I talked about having space to be able, not eating until I'm completely full, but leaving space for the digestive process to happen. But also leaving space for eating itself, right? Not just rushing, but seeing that I'm eating a meal and I am taking the time, I'm giving myself the space to enjoy this meal, this nutrition, this vitality that will nourish and elevate my body. So there's so much more to the 5 elements, but I'll leave it there for now. Out of the 5 elements is also born what we call the doshas. So at the beginning, I talked about the process of the Ayurveda being a process of who am I, right? Like what makes me feel alive, and how we have different interpretation of what a comfortable external balance of these 5 elements are. Some people like it cooler, some people like it drier, some people like it hotter. So there's all these different things, and that is often based on our innate constitutions. So the word dosha could be translated to constitution. So in the process of the Ayurveda, when we talk about having someone have a healthy diet, for example, it's not like there's this one diet out there and we all have to follow that diet. This is that diet, let's follow it. It's more about who am I and how old am I? Where do I live? what's going on in my life, all of these different things, what season are we in, and then based on that, making dietary choices that are nourishing to my constitution. And to help us understand what our constitution are, there are these three basic constitutions. So the first one is the Vata constitution. I'll explain in a moment, which is the harmonization, or it's an abundance, if you will, of the air and the space elements. And then there's the Pitta, which is the fire and the water. And there's the Kapha, which is the water and the earth. So we all have these 5 elements within us, but there is a dominance. So if you're someone who has a dominance of the air and space elements, then you fall under the constitution of Vata. If you're someone who has an abundance of the water and the fire, then you fall under the constitution of Pitta. And then if it's the earth and the water, then it falls under the constitution of the Kapha. So some people are Vata, some are Pitta, some are Kapha. Some people are Vata Pitta, some people are Vata Kapha, some people are Pitta Kapha, and some people are Vata Pitta Kapha. Now, in order to know what my constitution is, there are a variety of quizzes. We do have quizzes when you take the course, a fabulous quiz here. You could, of course, also see an Ayurvedic lifestyle specialist or go see an Ayurvedic doctor to try to identify what your constitution is. And the way that you identify it is by looking at different aspects of our body type. So, for example, generally speaking, there's more to it, but it's just to give you a bit of a sense of what this is. Vata people tend to be thinner. They have smaller bones, they have thinner skins, thinner eyes, thinner lips, thinner hair. They tend to be very light on their feet. They move faster, right? Because the Vata is the air and the space. So they tend to, a Vata person will tend to buzz around kind of thing. And so a Vata person's diet requirement will be different than a Pitta person's diet. Pitta people tend to be, in terms of size, more average size, so not too tall, not too short, medium-sized bone. They can put on weight easily or lose weight easily, whereas a Vata person will have a harder time putting on weight. They tend to lose weight with more ease. And a Pitta person will their hair tends to go gray faster. There tends to be a lot of intensity in the eyes, sometimes a lot of ruby to the skin, a lot of redness to the skin. They get fiery pretty fast, get sweaty pretty fast. Whereas a Kapha person will tend to, they could be very short, they could be very tall, but they're stocky or heavy or bigger bones. When they're muscular, they have really thick muscles, thicker hair, abundant hair, lustrous hair, big white pearly teeth, bigger lips, bigger eyes. So again, representing that element of the earth and the water, and then the air and the space, and the fire and the water. So once we know what our dosha is, once we know what our personal constitution is, what our starting point is in relation to the elements, then we start to look at what type of nutrition that we need. Now, to even better understand this, we also look at something called the gunas. And the gunas is a very important principles in both Ayurveda and yoga. The word guna could be translated as the cycles of nature. And it's the teaching that everything in the world of nature is bound by the cycles of nature. Everything in the world of nature is bound by the cycles of nature. So that includes your body, it includes the chair you're sitting on, it includes your home, it includes the plants in your garden, it includes your mind, it includes your emotions, it includes the food that we eat. So everything in the world of nature is bound by the cycles of nature. The cycles of nature are tamas, rajas, and sattva. Tamas, rajas, and sattva. So tamas, inertia, rajas, action, sattva, harmony. A way to, and every one of us have these three gunas moving through our body. So although in a moment you're going to understand that the process of Ayurveda, in order to reduce our stress and increase our energy, is the process of empowering ourselves through self-knowledge, by being aware of the world of nature, in order to do what is in our power to take action to enhance and harmonize our sattvic nature. So, everything in the world of nature. I have a garden. I go out and I plant my seed, and my flower starts to grow. Now, no matter how well I take care of my flower, at one point it's going to decay. It's going to go through the process of inertia and go back to the earth and feed the earth. No matter how well I take care of my flower, no matter chemicals, organic products I buy, whatever I do, there will be a point where my flower will decay. Everything in the world is bound by these cycles of nature. The beginnings, the middles, the ends, the sustainment. So for example, if we look at the process of getting up in the morning, of going to bed and getting up in the morning. So I go to bed, the state of inertia, the state of sleep, the positive side of tamas, where energy is going to be restored. The process of coming out of bed in the morning is the process of moving from tamas to rajas, of moving from inertia to action. But here's where it gets really interesting. Although the process is tamas to rajas, the way that I come out of bed can be rajasic, it can be tamasic, or it can be sattvic. If the way, and I'll explain what that would look like. If the process of coming out of bed is tamasic or rajasic, it feeds a state of stress. If the process of coming out of bed is sattvic, it feeds a state of energy. So coming out of bed in a tamasic state would look like this. Big, loud, disturbing noise waking me up. Snooze, snooze, snooze. Complain, complain, complain. Make sure I don't have enough time to get where it is that I'm going on time, so I have to grab dead, depleted food along the way. Right? So everything about that creates a state of heaviness and a state of inertia in my body. Rajas is the state of action. So waking up in a rajasic way would be waking up listening to the news. So right away I start learning, jumping out of bed super fast without really paying attention to how I feel. Maybe doing a few hundred push-ups, downing some espressos, telling everyone what they need to do. Like it's really kind of rigid. If I'm not manic or in a panic, I'm not being productive and I need to go, go, go. And we know that this state eventually leads to stress, or it's born out of stress, and it leads to depletion. Whereas a sattvic state of coming out of bed would be, and we have so much power right now to do that. Ideally, of course, it would be to wake up naturally, but we don't all have that privilege based on how our life is set up. But to wake up with a sound that makes us feel alive. We have the privilege. We can have anything we want wake us up. So to choose a song that brings a memory of joy, or a sound, or some specific bells or mantras, if you do that type of thing, to bring that harmonizing nature. Making sure that maybe you take the time to stretch, to say good morning to the people you share your life with, the time to hydrate, ensuring that you have enough time to get where it is that you're going on time, although we're all just going to our living rooms right now. But you know what I mean, you know, that process of setting ourselves up for success in a way that's respectful to our body, that's respectful to our mind. And food falls into these categories. There are food that is dead and depleted, food that creates a nervousness in the body, and food that are nourishing and inspiring and energizing. And so understanding the principles of the gunas in the context of how we live our life and in the context of nutrition and the food choices that we make is very much rooted in the principles of a healthy diet in the context of Ayurveda. But again, a healthy diet in the context of Ayurveda is individual, although there are some principles that are similar. There are differences based on where we live and a variety of different things. So now that we have an understanding, there are 5 elements. These 5 elements make up constitutions, different body types. There are 7 of them: Vata, Pitta, Kapha, Vata, Pitta, Vata, Kapha, Kapha, Pitta, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Right? So these 7 variations, and these 7 constitutions are impacted by the gunas differently, which again determines how stress is manifested. So if I am primarily a Vata person, when I'm under stress, when I'm in a state of disharmony, when I'm out of harmony with my nature, then the stress will manifest in a way of air and space. So it creates that nervousness. The Vata person who is very stressed out tends to move around a lot, tends to have this a lot of fragmentation, talk too much. There's a lot of insecurity, there's a lot of uncertainty. So Vata, out of balance stress, has a hard time making decisions. When I work in private settings with my Vata people, one of the homeworks I often give them is that the next time, although it's not applying right now, but the next time that they go out for dinner with their friends, I want them to pick the restaurant. And they look at me like, oh my God, I can't do it. Because they're not the ones who make the decisions. They're the ones who are more flexible. They're willing to go where you want to go. They're not so attached, it's a beautiful quality to have, but it can become a limiting factor in the sense of a dosha being out of balance, where I can no longer make decisions, which creates that internal stress, that internal turmoil. Whereas when a Vata person is energized, that when we're in a state of out of harmony, that means we're in a state of either tamas or rajas. That means that in that particular period of our life, our habits have been feeding energies that are depleting. So again, there are certain things in our life that we can say are out of our control. I can't control how strong the wind is going to be on my bike ride, but I can control how my vehicle is set up to face the wind when I'm on my bike ride. So this is that representation is what is in my power based on my constitution. And by having this awareness too of the different doshas and the different personalities, is we stop comparing ourselves to other people, which is another great source of stress, to compare ourselves to others. It's like we feel, if I'm primarily that, compare myself to someone who's primarily Kapha, I'm just constantly setting myself up for failure, setting myself up to feel not good enough, which again is a source of depletion and a source of stress. So out of harmony, a Vata person is scattered, buzz around, has a variety of different projects going on and never finishes the project, just here or there, which creates even more scatteredness in the mind. But in harmony, a Vata person, if you look at the picture that I showed here with the image, the eagle and the wind, the Vata person is the wind under my wings. Vata, it's the prana, the life force, the energy, the positive side of the air and space. What gives life to everything else, that allows things to manifest. So in harmony, a Vata person is an excellent communicator. A Vata person is very understanding. That Vata has the ability to take two opposing perspectives and really understand them and see their truths in both. Vata has great potentials to create and to sustain change and to be very adaptable in the times of change. When energized, when depleted, then that turns into scatteredness, insomnia, nervousness, the negative sides of the element of air and space. And then a Vata person who has this more of the air and space, the dryness, the nutrition values will be different. The nutritional requirements will be different. And the lifestyle requirements will be different than it would be for a Pitta person. So a Pitta person is primarily ruled by the elements of fire, by the elements of water. So fire, that great source of energy, the great source of transformation, the source of radiance, the source of courage, the source of making things happen. But fire is also, it could be also very depleting. Fire can burn, right? We use that example. I've burnt out. We use that example all the time. This person burnt out, I burnt out, I feel burnt out. That's when the element of fire is just going too strong. But when we have a contained fire, then the contained fire gives us light, gives us courage, gives us direction. A wildfire just drains us out. So a Pitta person who is out of balance, who is out of harmony, who is in a state of stress, has more aggression. They are more irritable, they have more anger. So whereas a Vata person tends to fall prey to worry, the Pitta person tends to fall prey to anger. And the Pitta constitution, highly ruled by the element of fire, Pitta people tend to be by nature very fast learners. They're good also at communication, at saying what they need to say and saying it that when they're harmonized, saying it directly and in a way that's uplifting. But when they're out of harmony, because the Pitta energy is so fast and quick and understanding, they fall prey to impatience and anger and have no tolerance for inefficiency. So whether it's the driver in front of you that's being inefficient, or the government, or whatever it is, and because the Pitta energy is so intelligent, there is an ability to justify one's anger. I am angry, I know why I'm angry, and this is that reason, and there's all of that, and the intelligence behind it. And if the Pitta is very strong, there's a tendency for the Pitta person to have an intimidating energy as well. And so that's continuously to feed the fire. But little by little, that fire becomes a source of depletion where you burn yourself out. Whereas when a Pitta person is in harmony, is in a state of sattva, phenomenal leaders, excellent leaders, so much clarity in order of the direction to take to move forward, excellent ability of digestion, positive energy and motivation to work out, to do these things. Whereas when out of harmony, the workouts tend to be two extremes, working out to the point of injury, shoveling or raking to the point of breaking the rake or breaking the shovel because you're going too hard. Everything you do, how'd you pull your shoulder? Shoveling too hard. But when the When the Pitta is harmonized, then the energy is courageous and uplifting and determined, very clear, and the ability to go after what you want. And not only that, but to also be in a place where you can inspire others, to inspire themselves, to teach people to find their own strengths, creating an environment that is uplifting rather than intimidating. So the fire is a source of energy. It is sattvic, it's harmonizing, rather than a fire that's out of control, that is destroying and depleting. And so again, the nutritional requirements for someone who has a dominance of Pitta are going to be specific to that person. You don't want to be eating food that create more inflammation in the body, for example. And then we have the kapha, which is the earth and the water. So we can see that the earth and the water there, that becomes even more solid, more tangible, heavier. And if you remember, I mentioned that the kapha body type is more, is denser, thicker bones, thicker skin, bigger eyes, big pearly teeth, thick hair, that type of abundance representing the earth and the body, the tangible. But out of harmony, the kapha energy falls prey to being lethargic. So whereas the vata person under stress will find themselves moving in a manic and in a panic, the kapha person will find themselves oversleeping, overeating, just overdoing things that continue to feed the heavy energy, and that continue to feed that state of stress. So the qualities of tamas and rajas being very attached to where we're going. So as I said, the vata person won't want to choose the restaurant. The kapha person wants to choose the restaurant, and if you want to change it at the last minute, they don't like it. They like consistency, and that's what we said, and that's how we did it, which in harmony can be a great source of energy, because it's an amazing ability to make decisions. But out of harmony, it's a form of stubbornness, a form of attachment that creates even more heaviness, even more downward, that downward structure of the negative side of earth and water. So kind of like quicksand, where there's just this drawing down. But in harmony, then this is where we find those positive side of the earth and the water, a great source of stability, a great source of nutrition and nourishment and vitality. When a kapha person is in their sattvic state, they bring tremendous contentment, tremendous gratitude, great source of unconditional love. They're very steady, whereas typically a vata person, let's say both the kapha and the vata person, let's say all three, the vata, the pitta, and the kapha person, want to train for a marathon, want to train for a race. So you'll often see the vata person choosing a 10K and going really fast at it. The kapha person may be choosing the marathon, but going slow and steady for a long time. Whereas the pitta person would also possibly choose any one of those, but would do so with extreme precision and with the right coach and the right everything, just being in that perfect state. I actually have a story that I invented in order to better teach the gunas and how they manifest differently in us. So I'll change and then I'll bring it back to this here, just to bring it more into context. So the story is, I made up some names, so Rosie, Sophie, and Tammy. Rosie And these three, Rosie, Sophie, and Tammy, have been invited to participate in a competition as to who can grow the most beautiful flower. None of them have ever participated in a gardening competition before, and none of them know anything about gardening. Now, Rosie, who when she does something, she does it really well and she doesn't mess around. She currently has a big project that's due at work. Her middle child has a big soccer competition coming up, and she's training for a marathon, but she still feels she has the time to do this. And when she does something, she does it really right. So it just so happens that the best gardener in the world is in Japan. No problem. She's going to fly there to go study with this person. Tammy, on the other hand, would also really love to go and study with the best gardener in the world, but she can't go because she lent some money to a friend and now it's not her fault. And now she's kind of stuck at home, so studying, and she's taking a local class, but her mind is not with what she's learning from the local class. Her mind is with Rosie and how great Rosie's life is and how much she wishes she could be like Rosie. So she's not taking in her own experiences. And Sophie, who also really wants to win, is not about to fly across the world to do this. Sophie realizes that she's got a good friend who knows a lot about gardening, and she needs with that friend to learn the principles. Sophie realizes very quickly that the process of gardening and growing a beautiful flower is as much about the knowledge that you have and the dedication that you have towards the flower as it is about getting it out of the way and letting the natural process occur and evolve. That she can't go pull on the flower for the flower to go faster. She's not going to go step on her own flower, right? That our inner Rosie will do everything she can to try to find some devices for that flower to grow and eventually snapping it. And our inner Tammy will forget. She's going to be so focused on how great she thinks something else is that she ends up stepping on her own flower. So the process of the gunas and of being in a state of harmony of energy rather than being in a state of stress is this process of awakening our inner sattva, our inner Sophie, because we have these three energies in our body. They are required in a positive way, but we want the sattva underlying. So feeding that energy so that it can manifest in its unique expression based on our unique expression, not based on how Rosie looks or how Tammy looks or how Jeff looks or how whoever looks, but based on our constitution. So if I am primarily Kapha, when I'm in a state of ease, when I'm in a state of energy and harmony, it is going to look different than someone who is primarily Pitta. Their state of harmony, their state of energy is different, just like our state of stress is manifested differently. Understand our innate starting point. Who am I? What is it that makes me feel alive? A consciousness of the world of nature and how the world of nature impacts my own nature and are interconnected, and how my inner nature is also a representation of my world of nature, the microcosm and the macrocosm. If I constantly surround myself by things that are depleting, it's going to be very hard to feel energized. But if I can surround myself by things that are energizing, then I can uphold and become that energy. Now, of course, as I mentioned many times, there are things that are in our control and things that are out of control. And so we pay attention to the things that are in our control, and the ones that are, like the food that we eat, it's my hand feeding. I choose to eat foods that are in accordance with my constitution, where I live on the planet, and in terms of what energizes me. So the process of Ayurveda is you do this particular test and you find out what your dosha is. And then based on that knowledge, you then adapt your diet and your lifestyle to more and more feed that state of energy, that state of harmony, rather than the state of disharmony, the state of stress. So in order to do all of that, so once we know our starting point, we have a consciousness of the gunas and the doshas and the importance of feeding lifestyle habits that are sattvic, then we start to look at all of this. Because if you remember, Ayurveda is a way of life that includes in very large part nutrition, but it also includes so much more. And it's not a specific diet. Ayurveda is not you eat this, you eat that. It is who are you? And then based on that, we adapt our nutrition to meet those needs. But it includes a variety of other practices in order to sattvify, in order to have more of that positive sattvic energy. The example that I gave about getting up in the morning. So again, that's in my power. So how can I set myself up for success? First thing in the morning, wake up in a way that is energizing rather than wake up in a way that is depleting. So it has that awareness, which is an attitude that we take. And it's important to recognize that it requires discipline. It requires effort. I have to want to show up. I have to want to make this happen in order for it to happen. I have to be open to learning the teachings, to think about the teachings, see how they manifest, and then have the discipline to apply the teachings based on my starting point, not from a comparative perspective. For example, when the children are young, the requirements or the lifestyle habits are very different. I've had students tell me, oh, I can't get up and meditate and practice my yoga and do all of this. Well, no, you've got like 2-3 kids or even one, young children. They're your practice right now. Your lifestyle is your yoga practice, your Ayurveda practice, your health, the harmonizing of your sattvic nature is based on the reality of your current lifestyle right now. So when they're older, this will change again. So it's an acceptance of the different stages of our life rather than imposing lifestyle habits that will be possible at a particular time in our life now, different stages of our life. So that we need awareness, and then based on that awareness, we cultivate the right attitude in order to sattvify our life and to set ourselves up for success. So I've talked about getting up out of bed and how we get up out of bed. But there's also the time that we rise and sleep to align ourselves with the cycles of nature. So the doshas are different body types, but there's also different times of the day. So for example, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is Pitta time. So it's the time where the digestive fire is strong, the creative energy is strong, we're more awake, the sun is at its peak, there's that fire energy. So we would have a bigger meal at and then if you go, and then from 2 to 6 is that Vata time, and then from 6 to 10 is the Kapha time. So, and then again at night, and then at 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. we have the Pitta time, which is one of the reasons why, or the main reasons why it is recommended that we go to bed before 10 o'clock. We want to go to bed during Kapha time, not during Pitta time, because after 10 we get our second wind, right? We call it the midnight snack. You're tired, if you pass that 10 o'clock, the energy comes back, possibly, you want to get all these things done, you're in the Pitta fire again. And then it's harder to get up in the morning. So we're asked to have that consciousness and to go up to bed during the time of darkness, honor the cycles of nature, as within, so without, as without, so within, I align my nature with the world of nature in order to create that harmonizing and energetic effect, rather than feeling depleted and stressed and losing my energy. And if I go to bed at a time that is harmonizing, then I will get up at a time that is more harmonizing as well. So hopefully, getting up before 6 a.m. Again, I know it's not always possible, different times in our life. And I'm someone who believes that a lot of the demands that we have on our life right now, I think they're pretty intense. And I think sometimes people are tired, like people, because they really are tired, like because the demands are so high. And so I think sometimes you need to give ourselves the space to rest, that's very sattvic. It's like knowing, am I tired because I need exercise, or am I tired because I need to rest? It's that understanding. And then there's the practices of yoga and meditation. There's the understanding of likes and dislikes. So like increases like, dislikes will impact the other way around. So it's like, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but I know for myself, when I'm depleted, I tend to crave things that deplete me more. But when I'm energized, I crave things that energize me. So that consciousness of what is it that energizes me, and how can I keep feeding that energy? And if I'm in a state of depletion, I'm in a state of tamas, that's that heaviness, then I'm going to need a lot of rajas, a lot of fire to pull myself out of it. And all of us go through these cycles of nature. Like the example that I gave about waking up, I'm sure you've experienced them all. Most of us have, right? So it's because the gunas live within us. And we go through these different stages at different periods, the stages of stress, the stages of energy. And then when we're energized, I call being energized, it's like I say, my fire is burning. I'm energized. How am I going to keep putting wood in that fire to remain energized? And the more I know that, then the more I can keep doing that, because I know what it's like to feel like it's pouring rain outside, it's completely dark, and I have no idea where the matches are. So I have found them, like you, I'm sure we're all in this together. You light the fire again, but it is much easier to keep the fire burning. So I do everything I can to try to keep my fire burning. And then there's something called the essence of the doshas, which you also learn about in the program, and that you understand in the context of food, the prana, the tejas, and the ojas. So the prana, the positive side of that air and space. The tejas is the positive side of the fire, and the ojas of the earth and water, which I'll talk a bit more in the next slide. And then there's the almighty nutrition, which you learn all about in this course, which really feeds that state of energy. So we can now understand that the process of an Ayurvedic diet is the process of having a sattvic diet based on our dosha. So if we look at what a sattvic diet would look like based on our dosha, there are different aspects of the food. So there's what I talked about, the time of day. Depending on the time of day, my digestive fire is at a different state. In Ayurveda, the biggest meal of the day is the lunch meal, and then dinner is typically a lighter meal, like a bowl of soup or something, because it takes a tremendous amount of energy to digest food, and the process of sleeping is the process of restoration. And so if my body is busy trying to digest food as I sleep, I don't get the same quality of sleep. So we have our biggest meal of the day at lunch during that pitta hour. And then there's also the seasons. So based on where we live and what's the season of our lives, but also the external seasons. I don't crave salads in the middle of winter. Really, with my constitution, that's the last thing that I want. I like soups and warmth and that opposing energy to warm me up. Whereas there's some people, you'll see them in pure winter eating something that's very cold, and they look at you like, what? Like those Pitta, very fiery people, different constitutions. But even just having that consciousness of the different seasons, and as I mentioned, because we live in a land of abundance and we have access to everything we want all year long, it's easy to forget what's in season, and to have in the back of our mind an awareness of the seasons and what grows locally, and to make that effort to eat fruits that are local, have been grown locally, that are in season, taste their flavors, connect with them, foods that are in line with our constitution, with how we feel. So that often has to do with, when I'm done my meal, do I feel energized or do I feel depleted after a meal? That's a big sign. Do I want to go for a nap? By the source of what was meant to be a source of energy. Has what was meant to be my greatest source of energy become a source of depletion? Then I need to make some changes, because food is meant to be this great source of energy. And paying attention to the seasons is one of the ways that we do that as well, as within, so without. And then we also have the flavors, so sweet, sour, salty, pungent, astringent, bitter. It's not uncommon that people fluctuate between sweet, sour, salty, or even sweet, salty, and forget about the other flavors. And each one of these flavors, like the sweet and sour, for example, that builds a lot of that kapha, that earth and water energy. And so if you have more of that constitution, those are the types of food you want to reduce in your diet, for example. Whereas if you're more vata, then they can be of great value, these foods, because they're grounding, they're sustaining, they're rooting. So a vata person, for example, like I said, am I tired? Am I depleted? Am I stressed out because I need to rest? Or am I depleted, stressed out because I need some movement? So what's my constitution? And then based on that, or am I tired and depleted because I need some nourishment? I'm not eating enough, which is often what a vata person will do. They go on the fly, they don't nourish themselves enough. Or am I depleted and tired and stressed out because I'm overfeeding myself, like a kapha person, and I need more cleansing? Do I need nourishment or do I need cleansing? Do I need to move and get fresh air, or do I need to rest? So again, who am I? What's my starting point? How is my stress manifesting? And based on that, what is my antidote in the context of the cycles of nature? So all of that with that dosha. And then there's the consciousness, right? Just opening our eyes to really the magnificence of life, the magnificence of our physical body. It's so easy to be in a state of judgment of our physical body, simply wishing it looked a certain way or behaved a certain way, again, the comparison or whatever it is. And rather than being in a state of respect and honoring this physical body and looking at food as this great opportunity to nourish, energize, and harmonize my body. Because if I'm constantly eating food that are stealing my energy, I'm constantly creating havoc and stress inside my body. My body is so busy trying to process a lack of nutrients and get rid of things that aren't real food, right? In terms of what's in our food today, just trying to cleanse out from that it doesn't have that great opportunity for nourishment and for energy. And then we have the approach. So not just eating well, but how I eat, how I show up to my food, sitting down, having gratitude, smelling my food, tasting my food, chewing my food, digesting my food, having a consciousness of where that food came from, having a sense of gratitude for the farmers that grew it, and everything that's associated with the abundance of food that we have, all creates that state of energy. And that the more energy that I have, the more that I can sustain the external stresses in my life. So if I'm constantly depleted, if I'm constantly in that state of stress, anything that is depleting or that demands of me is very harsh. But if I have an abundance of energy, then when there's a big win out there, it doesn't affect me as much because I've entered the situation with an abundance. So what is in my power, and the foods choices that I make are in my power, and the approach that I take to my eating is also in my power, is also something that I can do. And I often tell my clients, I'll say, the first bite of anything that you eat, chew it 3 times. Or take the first 3 bites, and chew them slowly. Taste every flavor, really take your time. And then people, of course, forget. So they start eating and then they forget. And then I say, if you forget, the moment you realize you forgot, put the fork down, and those next 3 bites, just chew them, taste them, slow down. Let food be the source of energy it was meant to be. And then there's the quality of food. So some foods are tamasic, some foods are rajasic, and some foods are sattvic. So a food that is tamasic is a food that is dead and depleted. It's a food that when I eat it, the process of digesting that food requires my stored sources of energy. So rather than the food being a source of energy, the food has become a taker of energy. That's tamasic food. There's no nutritional value in it. So anything that is dead and depleted is considered tamasic. So anything that's been highly processed, that has been taken, that the nutritional values have been taken away from it, it's more of a foodless food than it is a food that when I eat it, I don't feel energized, I just feel depleted. That's a tamasic food. Rajasic food can be very similar to sattvic food. It can be it can be very healthy in the context of good nutrition and all of that, but it can be too high in spices and the wrong spices in accordance to my constitution. It could also be very high in caffeine, creating that nervous energy, or whereas a tamasic diet can be too abundant, like I eat too much of it and then I feel heavy. A rajasic diet could be not enough nutrition. I don't eat enough, and when I do, I eat on the fly and it's fast. Or it could be a diet that's very rooted in vanity and trying to transform our body for this social condition, expectation of our body rather than of respect for our body. And a sattvic diet is one that is in harmony with our constitution, with our the place, the country that we live in, the season that we're in, the time of our life that we're in. The requirements change based on our age, because there are different periods of our life also that are associated with the doshas, but you'll learn all of that in the course. And the sattvic food are whole foods. It's full of nourishment. It's alive. It's got lots of prana. So when I mentioned earlier that the prana, the tejas, and the ojas, the prana is the life force that's found in the food. The tejas is that energy of fire that I can digest it properly. And the ojas, the love, the nourishment, the taking in the immunity, the life force. So the enough space, enough nourishment, enough nutrition, enough hydration in the food, so that all of these, the 5 elements, are in harmony in the context of my own harmonize nature in the context of my own starting point, in the context of the seasons. So the more that I can pay attention to all of those things, the cycles of nature, as within, so without, my individual nature, the cycles of the gunas, what is in my power to help me sustain the winds that are out of my power, so that I can face the winds of change with great energy rather than depletion, then the more I do those things, the more I feed the sattva in my life, the more I feed that natural harmonized nature, which is more my true nature than the other way around. So we stop going from go, 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 go to crash, and we find more of an even keel with the cycles of nature. So there is so much more to Ayurveda. It's a beautiful, beautiful approach to eating. It's a beautiful approach to life that includes body, mind, and soul. And the course that was developed by the Institute is excellent. I feel very honored to have the privilege to share that course and to share these teachings, because they have had such a positive impact on my life, and I'm continuously learning and integrating, and I love sharing it. So thank you very much.